Welcome back to another episode of Sal and Pals Go to the Movies. I'm here with my friend Touly. Say hi, Touly.
Hey guys.
And today we're going to be reviewing Avengers Endgame. And just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. The event set in motion by Thanos that wiped out half the universe and fractured the Avengers rank compels the remaining Avengers to take one final stand in the Marvel Studios' grand conclusion to the 22 films Avengers Endgame. In this film, we see basically almost most of the characters from the MCU come back for the final grand battle. There were some good things about this movie and some bad things, but overall, I enjoyed this movie. Let's talk about the time length. An hour and 1 minute long film. In reality, to me, I think it could have been a little shorter. So I'm going to start off by going back and forth to cons and pros. First, I'm going to say my con was the length of the movie. It could have been reduced. I'm not saying to a complete half film, but maybe a little shorter than 3 hours and still would have worked. To me, I felt that the beginning was a little slow. I'm not saying it was super slow, but there was some parts where it was like a roller coaster. It just came to almost a complete standstill and then all of a sudden it starts gaining momentum again. So by cutting some of those little parts, I think it would have served the movie better because half of the movie was great. The pacing was great at the end. After a certain point of the movie, it just kept going full speed. Let's go with the pros. I enjoyed that most of the cast came back. The only two people that I didn't see that I would kind of wanted to see was Ghost from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Also, I wanted to see Lewis maybe at the end, come back and reprise a little joke here and there because this movie did have jokes left and right. Another pro and con would be Chris Hemsworth playing Thor. We see him the same way we saw him in Thor Ragnarok, and I think this is directors from Thor Ragnarok who made the script to be kind of funny and it carried over to this film. And we did see him making an appearance with a little belly and also playing homage to the Big Lebowski, the dude, with his gown and his beard and the sunglasses while drinking alcohol all the time. I see how people really like that. Maybe it was, carried over from Thor Ragnarok. But I did enjoy at the beginning of the movie where he came out brewing with anger. And I think Touly's going to touch upon this. And he did what needed to be done. And that basically, to me, opened my eyes and said, okay, this is the Thor that I know from the comics who is full of rage. The other con that I'm going to throw out there really quick is the lack of blood and gore. I'm not saying that I really wanted this movie to be really bloody and gory, but for a movie that goes out and says this is the final stand and we're going to have people disappear and die and, being killed in front of you and not show any blood. I don't want to say I want to see gushing blood, but I wanted to see more than we saw. First of all, for example, when Thanos at the beginning gets decapitated, there was no blood there except when we saw it fall on Nebula's face, but we didn't see it. We saw the aftermath. Also, when Hawkeye, he's in Japan chasing down the Yakuza, he faces off with the boss and he's slicing him, but yet we don't see any blood until he grabs his neck and we see his hand covered in red. We see him clean the blade off that has blood splatter. These are some parts that I really wanted to see more, especially in the ending when there was a battle. I wanted to see more casualties because with the lack of casualties, to me it seems like it was a one-sided battle that Thanos was losing troops, but we weren't. And I wanted to be more kind of like a tie, and then at the end we come out being the victor. And for that, I wanted to see more casualties. I'm not saying that I really am for that, but I'm just saying that I really wanted them to bring it back together. For my last con, but just to let you know, these cons are not going to deduct points. They're just little nitpicks that I have. I think Captain Marvel was introduced a little too soon with their standalone movie. In this movie, the way they did it, they recorded this movie before they did the standalone movie. But when I saw this movie, it just seemed like her character she was there, but not there at the same time. She came in and just saved Tony, and then boom, we don't see her until later on in the movie. And to me, that doesn't really say, hey, you just saw her standalone movie. Now this is her. We didn't see her use her powers in any significant way that would allude it to me like, wow, this is super powerful superhero. It's like just another regular superhero to me in the MCU. With that said, let's talk about the pros. We do see a lot of great acting. I did enjoy the sacrifice that Scarlett Johansson did. And the reason is that her character, Black Widow and Hawkeye, chemistry actually works pretty good together. And you get to know them and understand them, that they get each other without even talking. There's these like two soldiers from war that come back and they're friends, but without actually talking. They're like, they connect at a different level, and they're there to survive while still having pain inside of them. The way they start fighting each other to see who's going to sacrifice, themselves for the Soul Stone, to me, kind of brought it to a higher level. But I also want to bring back that, there was other people that were sacrificed, like Vision, like Scarlet Witch. She made a reference at the end, but I think it was too late in the movie to make a big impact. Vision, like a lot of people don't remember, like that he actually was a stone, that Thanos just took. And for her, it wasn't just a stone, it was a real person. It was her love. So we do see that there's some people that have left, but in reality, I think most people will be focused on Iron Man who left. And to me, that doesn't really sit well. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that there was more than just Iron Man who left us in this film. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Touly and see how he saw the movie.
Overall, I would say I love the film. I will nitpick at some stuff, but that's not to say that this is what really made me feel it wasn't a perfect film. These are probably personal nitpicking stuff. The only thing that I would say, and I'm just going to start off with my review in terms of the one con related thing about this film that I would say I would deduct points from it, is the pacing. Sal already mentioned that this film is a little over 3 hours long, and to me, I'm alright with that, as long as the film has decent pacing. Unfortunately, for like the first 45 minutes to an hour, it kind of suffered in pacing because, and I'm trying to be reasonable and understanding to a degree as well, for a film like Avengers Endgame, where it's the culmination of all these prior films and all of these characters that are going to have some sort of role into it. They need to, or at least it feels like the film wanted to rekindle these characters in terms of like their history, their personality, stuff like that for the audience. And because there were so many characters, they decided to spend a degree amount of time on these characters so that when things happen to them down the second half of the film or whatever, then people will feel for them even more. For me personally though, I've always been a believer that if this is a film, the current film that you're watching is either the final one of a series or it's, leading towards something that's going to end eventually, that whatever happened before, the audience should already be aware of it. Maybe they'll need some reminding, maybe a little bit. That I could let it be and not downgrade it too much. But here in this film, we have so many characters that they needed to show a little thing here and there, and then even a little bit more to down the road with some of these characters, particularly like with Captain America. They kept on showing his locket of Margaret, I believe that's her name, and then down the road they showcased her again in physical form when Captain America went back in time. I think they even showed it too during the doppelganger fight against himself. So for me, I'm thinking to myself, what if they just forget, or they just did without the locket scenes altogether, and maybe just showed the scene where he saw Margaret again when he went back in time? That would have served the purpose I felt like that they were trying to convey and saved up on some time. Now, you're saying, or you might be thinking, well, how much time are you really saving from doing this? This is just Captain America you're talking about. Well, again, there are so many characters that if you imagine, if they spent this much time already on Captain America, imagine they just spent like 10 or 20 seconds here for this character and then this character, and it starts adding up, and eventually you get 10 to 15 minutes worth of content that to me didn't really serve a purpose or didn't provide any additional information that I would have not already came to know myself. So again, I kind of understand where they were coming from in terms of why they included this, just to give the audience members a refresh course as to who these characters are, where the motivations stand. But I personally stand on the side of I should already know who these characters are at this point. So because of this, the pacing kind of suffered for like the first 45 minutes to an hour. Not to say that some of these characters deserve some of these time so that they get to reestablish who they were and stuff, or where they're headed. I'm not saying that the movie should devoid of anything like that, but I'm just saying it did it too much for my taste. So because of that, I thought the pacing was off. And then kind of going along with that and trying to transition to the more positive side though, in terms of spending time on developing these characters or letting to know who they are or who they are to become. To me, 3 characters really stood out that they took this sort of approach on. Definitely Tony Stark, because of what happened to him at the end of the film, but yeah, everything that led up to that moment. For me, particularly when he met his father, that was definitely a new experience, and he's always had this picture in his mind of who his father was. And when he finally met him, I mean, it was as if I was right there standing next to him or seeing him talk to his father. And it was a very surreal moment. And to me, that was one of my favorite part of the film, just seeing Tony Stark interact with his father. Another character who kind of went through this sort of character revelation that made me appreciate them even more throughout this film was Nebula, who was initially a villain in Guardians of the Galaxy, but because of what happened to her and her relationship with Thanos and whatnot, we came to see her change for the better, of course, starting with her scene with Tony on the aircraft and them playing paper football and whatnot. And you started seeing her turning a new page. When you saw her prior self, the one who came back from the past to the future and brought Thanos into the present, that Nebula, you kind of saw her motivation, that she was trying so desperately to outdo Gamora and just in any shape or form make her father, make Thanos proud. And I really appreciated that aspect of them, providing that information for me. That to me was like new information. Nebula was another character who I thought this sort of character devotion was required. Yeah, Nebula and Tony Stark. The last character, or should I say characters, who I thought they needed to reintroduce who these characters were or what they meant to each other so that the plot could kind of move forward, was Hawkeye and Black Widow. Because when they arrived where they needed to either sacrifice one or the other in order to get the Soul Stone, they needed to kind of highlight why this would have worked between these two individuals, because they did have this sort of connection back in the Avengers films. For me, at that point, I sort of forgot about it. Like, maybe it was at the back of my head, but I was like, wait, how is this going to work? Because they need to sacrifice somebody who is very important to them. This was something that they needed to highlight in order to make the Soul Stone appear for one of them. So that was another thing that I thought was required for me to appreciate, the time spent on rekindling the audience with the present motivation of these characters. So, but everything else, either they could have done something that would have taken a little less time, or just do without, altogether. So again, all of this just comes back to the idea of pacing. Now, nitpicking stuff, again, these are stuff that I would say I wouldn't necessarily deduct points from, but it's just things that I personally kind of cringed or whatever when I saw it. And Sal already mentioned one of them, seeing Thor and his lack of physique, shall I say, with his bear belly and stuff. I was telling Sal, I felt like this is a hit or miss thing. Either you're on one side and you thought it was hilarious, or you're on the other side, in which I'm at, where I'm like, I could have done without it. I understood where his state is at. He's feeling remorseful. He's feeling like he let people down, that he could have done better. They're showing his humanistic side, but I didn't need to see that bear belly and stuff to kind of get that point. And in fact, it kind of got distracting throughout the film, because whenever they showed him with the bear belly, they sort of aligned that with him being goofy or whatever, or not being very serious, even though he was trying to be serious. It just took away from the seriousness of the scene. So I think that was a danger in them doing this, and for me, I kind of saw it in this light. But like I said, some people, they enjoyed it, so kudos to these guys, but for me, it didn't work. Oh, and this too. Again, another nitpicking thing. I thought that one of the MVP characters or animals in this movie was the rat who turned on Ant-Man's machine in the van. If it wasn't for this rat, who knows what would have happened? If they would have gone to where they were at all at the end of this film, reviving all these people who got snapped in the prior film. So my gripe with that is, come on, Marvel. I've been waiting this long for a finale movie, and you could have done something better than the rat. So that's again me being nitpicky, but I think I'm not the only person I feel like who feels that way. I think I've come across other people who have complained about it. Not enough to the degree where I say I'm going to deduct points from the film, but it was just something that I cringed when I saw. And then the whole time traveling thing, they tried to defend themselves by trying to make sense of it and trying to say that these other films, the way they handle it's not how time travel works. But at the same time, the way they describe it, they make it seem like this is the correct way. But in all honesty, the way they handle it also caused some time paradox as well. But that's just them trying to break the fourth wall and trying to get you on board on what they're trying to do, so that you don't do stuff like which was pretty logical too. You think about it, when one of the characters mentioned that, hey, why don't we just go back and destroy Thanos when he's a baby? Of course, there's some morality stuff that you have to consider because it's a baby and all that stuff. But, what they say does make sense in a way as well. So, but then they try to defend themselves by saying, well, if you do that, then this causes a ripple effect here. And then because of that, it causes a ripple effect here, yada, yada, yada. So, again, it's their way of justifying that what they're doing is the only way to go about getting back these people who they lost. So I thought that them trying to defend themselves wasn't necessary because either you buy into it or you don't. And we already bought into it, guys. We need a way to get back these people, and these are you going to do it. And we're on board. We just want to see what happens. You don't need to say all these stuff because come on, guys. You guys are dealing with time travel, and time travel is a pretty messy thing. So just get on with it. If you're going to do time travel, go ahead and just do time travel. Don't defend yourselves. Again, that's my 2 cents on that. And then Sal already mentioned it, but I'm going to briefly mention it as well because this is now the creative side of me coming out in terms of how they should have implemented Captain Marvel in this film. With the prior Captain Marvel as her origin story and as a film to sort of introduce her to the audience so that when they see her in Endgame, they wouldn't be taken aback in terms of, ooh, who's this character? Why is she so powerful? Yada, yada, yada. But I thought like the way they used Captain Marvel in this film, it should have been in such a way or they should not have showcased her in the prior film, like a standalone film. So I already pointed this out, but I just wanted to bring it back because this is, again, another thing that really stood out to me that I thought they should have handled a little bit differently, or if not significantly differently, and that she should have just showed up when things were like on the brink of defeat for the good guys. Like she was the last resort, but they had no more thing to rely on. Like they were out of resources, they didn't know what to do. Thanos was going to defeat them once more, and then out of the blue, these things show up from out of nowhere, and of course it's Captain Marvel, and they're like, who is this person? And she's wrecking havoc, she's destroying ships like she always does, she's beating up Thanos, but probably not to the degree where we think that she's able to defeat him because he is able to possess the Infinity Gauntlet with all the Infinity Stones in them, and because of that, she was taken out for that brief time. So I thought that's the way they should have handled Captain Marvel in this film. Introduce her, get the audience excited or questioning who she is, and then in the film later down the road, if they so to choose, introduce her origin tale or any of the stories that she even mentioned in this film at the beginning when she rescued Tony and told the rest of the gang on Earth that she was too busy handling situations like theirs on Earth, but on 1,000 or so different other planets. So you could easily do a spin-off film based on one of those stories. So yeah, that was the one thing that I was hoping that they introduce a character that wasn't a part of the prior MCU films, just so that it get me excited, get me hyped, get me thinking, oh wow, I did not see that coming at all. And I thought Captain Marvel could have served that purpose. But of course, they already introduced her in the last Avengers film with the Nick Fury ending credit scene, and of course her standalone film. It's a missed opportunity, but I just wanted to share my thought there too because I thought that was another thing that really stood out to me in a negative light. And of course, there are other things I could still nitpick, but like I said, overall in the grand scheme of things, though, there were more good than bad. So I would just say I love this film, and that the only thing that I would say that really stood out to me that was bad about this film, or not necessarily bad, that could have been better. Let me put it in that way. Could have been better. Was the pacing. I would definitely recommend watching it if you haven't, and avoid spoilers if you can. But unfortunately, if you are listening to this podcast, you have probably already been spoiled. But yeah, that's just my thought.
I share the same ideas with you. First, let's go back to the Captain Marvel basically being introduced in the prior movie and her role in this movie. I think they could have used her in a better way. Maybe have her use the gauntlet. That way you could show how much power she has that other people have gotten burned. Even Thanos basically almost killed him when he was destroying the stones. But have Captain Marvel use the gauntlet like nothing, wield it. That would actually show her true potential and her true power. Next, let's go back and talk about the rat. That to me, like you said, it was really weak writing. It seems like somebody just last second like, oh, how do we get Ant-Man out of the quantum realm? Oh, damn, we forgot about that. I just have a rat, turn on the machine. Why not use Ghost? You already introduced her before. Maybe have her phase in and out as she's decaying, and her last attempt would be to turn on the machine. She probably was not snapped away, but she was left, in a weak state to the point where she just got there to his van and turned on the machine. He comes out and says, I got you out, good luck. And then for her just to phase out, that would have been a better way than just have a rat run over the machine. I really want to touch upon the chemistry between Black Widow and Hawkeye, and the reason, like I said, it's them. They're always talking about Budapest, and even on the way to get the Soul Stone, they're like, we're really far away from Budapest. That's what they said. And I'm like, we don't know what happened in Budapest, but yet we can ponder and come up with ideas. This is what links them, what makes them real connected. And I'm not talking about, oh, they're dating each other, but they do show emotions in the sense that they care about each other. Maybe as lovers, maybe they were lovers back then. We don't know, but we can just speculate. And that brings a deeper connection and basically impacted me when they were trying to sacrifice each other and then Black Widow just beat them to it kind of thing. So to me, because of that chemistry right there, it served a bigger purpose to get to identify these two people, as real characters, especially at the beginning when Hawkeye was with his family and they just faded away. They just disappeared. I mean, to me, that basically was one of my favorite moments, how that character got developed and how he got to the point in the same way how it was almost with Thor, where Thor was just raging to the point where he was silent in the corner and everybody was looking at him and saying, what's wrong with him? He's like, well, he's just brewing with hatred, because he hates himself for not winning, shows up to Thanos and just boom, gets to the point, basically chops him off into pieces. That's the kind of action we wanted to see, but this movie did deliver it at the end, but at the beginning it kind of played flip-flop with us, flipping from Thor being serious and brewing with anger to the point where he's a comical character, and I attribute it again to the director, Taika Waititi. He's basically the voice of Korg, but he's the director from Thor Ragnarok. And I think, and I can't put my finger on it, but I do think that he's responsible for making Thor a comical character in this movie, giving him the beer belly and everything. Now let's go to almost at the end and talk about Captain America going back and returning the stones and coming back to pass on, like what we say, the torch to Falcon. He shows up as old Captain America, and this to me kind of didn't feel quite right, and at the same time I it's okay because they really didn't explain what the soldier serum does, if it stops you from aging or really slows down the aging process. So in a sense I can see it both ways. He went back in time, returned the stones, and went back to Peggy Carter, or Margaret Carter, aka Peggy, and lived with her up until present time, and he aged. Or he went back, somehow he got captured and they drained the, soldier serum from him, making him a human again and age naturally. And for him to pass on the shield to Falcon, which is an actual event in the comics, him becoming the next Captain America, when in the comic arc, Captain America actually gets the serum extracted from him. He grows old, he has to pass on the torch to Falcon, and Falcon becomes temporarily Captain America. So that kind of played accurately into the thing, but at the same time, they needed to establish it more. I think they could have done it by not focusing too much and rubbing in our faces that he was missing Peggy by looking at the locket. So to me that felt good, but at the same time it felt kind of pushed in a sense. I think I could have done without it, but at the same time I do want to hint at a theory here. I think they did it on purpose because they will be there's going to be a series on Disney Plus revolving around Agent Carter. So that could be kind of a little spoiler, or like a hint that stay tuned for this part, and linger in your mind what would happen to Captain America while he was back in that time. So one of the last things I want to say is that if you saw, I guess, the Easter eggs, we had two Easter eggs. Well, actually, we had two extra scenes, one with Stan Lee as the driver. I mean, I think it was one of his last cameos that he filmed. And for what it is, it felt okay, but it wasn't anything really special to me. It was just Stan Lee. I could have enjoyed if they did something better as an homage to him in the movie. But also, we did see one of the Russo brothers, Joe Russo, playing the grieving man in the support group with Captain America, and I thought that was actually better done. And I actually wanted to see Stan Lee in there talking to Joe or having conversation with him, even if it wasn't person to person, just like put him there and have him sitting there. I would have enjoyed that a little better. So with that said, I'm going to ask Touly to give us his final grade for the movie.
Overall, like I said, I enjoyed this movie more so than any of the things that I would fault it on. I would highly recommend this film to people who are interested in an MCU film that deals more so on the emotional side and how these characters deal with loss, how they rekindle certain relationships, how they go about getting back loved ones, or the sacrifice that certain people have to make in order to bring back these loved ones or protect them, and to even see some of your lovable characters in this MC universe shine in a different way. To me, if you're a big fan of Tony Stark, Nebula, or Captain America, this film, I say, did a really, really good job at highlighting what happened to them from start to finish. And we didn't talk about it, but I would just say that if you want to see an awe-inspiring moment, because there is a holy F moment in this film, at least I feel like it, that's pretty universal across any theater that or any audience that you might be watching this film with, that happens towards the end of the film. And of course, it involves Captain America. If you want to see this awe-inspiring moment, go watch this film. Your jaws will drop, or at least you will be. A smile will come to your face. I cannot imagine that a smile will not come to your face when you see this particular moment. But grade-wise, I am gonna give this film a 9.0 out of 10.
Nice. I share the same grade with you, 9 out of 10. I also recommend people to go see this movie. Like you said, it touches upon humans who have lost and try to regain what they have lost and sacrifice for the better good. We did pick at things because we do see that they could have done things better, but in a sense, this film was a great film to wrap up this whole arc of 22 films. And all I gotta say is, I think I liked it 3,000, yeah, I mean, it's a very touching, people cried, laughed. And when the film does that, then you know that either these people are real fans who want to see this movie, or the film does have what it takes to become a great film. And yes, there is things that they do wrong in this movie, but just really minor. And this is why we said these are really things we nitpick, but overall we enjoyed it. And I saw it 2 times already, okay? And it's been only out 2 days. So this movie's great. 9 out of 10 for me. So I guess that wraps it up for this review of Avengers Endgame. Please join us next time when we review Pokemon Detective Pikachu.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
And remember, hit that subscribe button and like this film 3,000 times. And remember, keep watching movies.